Okay, we're live. Welcome, everyone. This is my series called Experts Unplugged Speaker Spotlights from the Craft Brewers Conference, which kicks off in Philadelphia at the Convention Center from April 20th to the 22nd. I will be speaking at the conference, Joanne Newborn, CEO of Newborn Evolution, and I have Ryan Malkin with me here today. And I'm going to introduce him in a second, just in case people don't know me. My talk is Attention to Action, Winning Distributor Mindshare to Deliver Revenue Results. That's on April 22nd. But really, if you're in the business, getting a distributor to take your brand is a big hurdle, and it's a massive hurdle. But really, that's just the beginning, right? If you want your product to sell, you really need to be building that relationship and partnership with your distributors. So my session really teaches you how to do this to give you an advantage over your competitors. But I'm really excited to be talking with Ryan today. He's the founder and principal of Malkin Law, and he's an attorney, and he focuses on beverage and cannabis law. And he's got more than 15 years of experience in providing guidance to suppliers, wholesalers, retailers, and agencies and third parties within these regulated industries. And as someone who spent nearly 3 decades in the industry, there are many, many legalities. So I'm excited to jump into this talk with Ryan. Welcome, Ryan. His talk is going to be Legal Jeopardy, Testing Your Knowledge, and that's on Tuesday the 21st at 1:30. So I am going to jump into some questions, but I just wanted to know if you wanted to say hi to everyone before we
Yeah.
jump.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to my presentation. It's going to be basically to give a highlight a live Jeopardy game with a special guest speaker. It's a comedian to act as the host, so make it a little bit more exciting, and it'll be an interactive, fun seminar where we test you on all of your beverage knowledge.
Yeah, so I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about some of the topics that you're going to cover. You don't have to give anything away because it sounds really fun, but just some areas that people will learn more about.
Yeah. So it's going to be very similar to Jeopardy, and that it's going to go from $100 to $500 level, and will get gradually harder as the numbers go up, and it's going to be covering everything from licensing and manufacturing, distribution, and trade practices and marketing. So it's going to cover kind of all of the usual suspects, and we're going to just run through some relatively easy questions to really much more difficult, challenging questions. Maybe there'll be a double Jeopardy thrown in, and we'll see how everybody does, and maybe there'll be some prizes for the winner.
That's great. And I think, too, when it comes to legalities, um, the people sometimes even don't know what they don't know. You know what I mean? So I think that would be
Yeah.
a great part of it as well.
At the end of the day, legal presentations or legal discussions are not necessarily to walk away thinking you're going to know everything, but rather to issue spot, hopefully, especially as it relates to trade practices, to walk away. And then when an issue like that comes up in the future, like, oh, wait, I think I should call someone because I remember hearing, something about that at some point at a conference. So if you can walk away knowing that in the future, if something comes up, you'll be issue spot and think to call a lawyer, then that's win.
Yeah, and that you make a great point because knowing who to call is the really important piece too. People might have questions sometimes, but they're not even sure who to ask. And I would say in terms of the distributor relationship, on my side as well, I'm going to be walking through things that people probably have never even thought about because a lot of times people think, well, great, we got our contract, we signed the contract, and now our product is going to sell like crazy. But it's really so much more than that and so much deeper than that. And it's ongoing, right? The partnership is ongoing year after year. It's never really over, right? That's a big, big part of building the business. Um,
I mean, I agree with you. It's definitely not just signing the distribution contract. I know that that's your topic, but we spend a lot of time reviewing distribution contracts, and
yeah,
especially the beer side with the franchise laws. It's basically a prenup, and you not need to think very carefully about how you're going to get out before you get in.
that's such a great comparison that it's a prenup. Yeah, I've been working with some of our clients, and asking them to dig deeper into the contract, because sometimes, they're making assumptions about what they can do and can't do. And I'm like, I'm trying to protect you from all of a sudden finding out that, you may owe margin to your distributors. Like, these are why these meetings are so important to find out ahead of time. Like, if this isn't a good situation to do and apologize later, this is an area where you really need to know the parameters.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, the small guys have it a little bit, or not a little bit, but a lot more. It's a lot harder with them because the distributor can just say, no, we're not going to take your product if you don't, take these edits. But knowing what edits to make and trying to be light with your touches in the right places, but still trying to figure out how you're going to get out before you get in is hugely important. And then, of course, with the bigger guys or anybody with more leverage, it's, a whole different situation.
Absolutely. So what kind of clients do you typically work with?
The majority of our clients are definitely suppliers. So we work with certainly a lot of breweries. We're also counsel for the American Craft Spirits Association, so we do a lot on the craft spirit side. We're also counsel for the New York State Distillers Guild and the Florida Distillers Guild, so certainly focus a lot on smaller producers. We're also counsel for the Adult and Non-Alcoholic Beverage Association. So we do a lot in the non-alc space, so as well as hemp-derived THC products lately. So it's really, I would say, 80% are producer clients.
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, those are also wholesalers. I mean, certainly they're going to be, if they're not actual producers, wholesalers in the TTB sense. But basically, the brand owners are the majority of our clients, and then some wholesalers, but very few, and then retailers, and a lot of agencies and third parties who work with suppliers. So there might be the event agency or tasting agency, or doing activations or PR or things like that. And then I also have an app which is separate from the firm, but I manage that as well, called Set the Bar, and it's basically an app on your phone that has trade practice rules in all 50 states for sales and marketing people in a legal way. Like, so it's very easy for people to read. It's yellow, green, and red light activities, and that's another tool that we use to help clients who are, and anybody, but help people kind of understand what the rules are in an easy to read way.
That is incredible, and that is really needed and valuable. I can't even tell you. So I worked for a very, very large spirits producer, and at some point I really just went and downloaded all the legalities for all 50 states, because my team and I covered all 50 states. And it was incredible how many times we had to refer to each state's legalities for the teams that we were working with internally. And they don't change that much. They do change from time to time, but it was amazing how much people don't know. And we, we're the suppliers, very big suppliers, huge portfolio. So I love the idea of the app, because that's just right there at your fingertips.
Yeah, because we would spend a lot of time creating Word, like 50 state surveys for people in Word, but no one ever really refers to those, because obviously people are not walking around with a stack of Word documents when they're running on sales calls and doing things. So that's why we created it, so it's really easy to read and accessible.
Yeah, and again, it always amazed me how people were like, "Well, let's just see if we get caught." Like, no, that's not the way we're going to work. I'd rather be the bad cop and say no up front. And we always worked really closely also with our internal legal team as well. And I would say one thing, actually, for everyone that is working, on with your legal team, like Ryan would be on your legal team, is that even if Ryan or someone, says, no, you can't do that, I found that what was really helpful from, when we work with building leaders and high performing teams, is really thinking ahead and being proactive. And the next question is, okay, if we cannot do that, what can we do? Right? So that I leave a meeting with a solution to bring back to the team that I was working with, versus just going back and saying, no, the legal shut it down. Well, no, let's keep the conversation going. Let's look at what is possible.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that you would get very many return calls or clients if all you all you did was say no, 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 no. So I think ultimately it's being pragmatic and figuring out what the business wants to do, right? And saying, okay, well, what do you want to do? What are the business goals? And then let's figure out how we can, get you there. And maybe the activity that they want to do is actually illegal, but there may be something that you can do that's much closer to what the business wants to do. Even sometimes I found changing like 2 words could potentially go from, no to yes. So yeah, 100% you have to think about what the goals are and try to figure out how you're going to help the business team or whoever your client is to get there. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. And I would say too, for the suppliers and people you work with, really to start thinking proactively versus reactively, because a lot of times in the business, most businesses, people are running in reactive mode, right? Putting out fires, I'm tackling this problem, that problem. But like you said, let's start with the outcomes that you want to achieve and really know what that is, rather than, hey, I have a great idea. Can I do this?
And yeah, I mean, that's okay too, but it's just sort of understanding and bringing people in early is always helpful too. Sometimes I'll do sit in on annual meetings or sit in on planning meetings, and if anything pops, I may not even say much, but something might pop up and they may be like, oh, here's what our huge plan for next year is, and maybe that's not the right way to do it. You can chime in now and say, okay, well, let's tweak it this way and you're good to go, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember I used to have, well, it was something that we realized that was necessary. I used to have someone from my team sit in on the agency meetings, because from an agency side, they weren't as familiar with the legalities. And they could, again, just be a fly on the wall. They're not there to interrupt the creative process, but also flag something while they were in the meeting, versus coming out of the meeting and then, going back and saying, no, we can't do this. We have to start all over again. So again, it's about just being proactive, saving time, really getting as productive as you can. Because to me, time is the most valuable thing that you have, right? You can't get more of that. You can get more of everything else, but you can't get more time.
Right.
So what are some of the most common legal mistakes that you see brewers make, especially around what you're talking about, licensing, labeling, distribution agreements?
I mean, so there's probably a few, but distribution agreements is the big one in terms of just jumping in. And we'll spend a lot of time where people will send us contract and say, they're doing a terrible job, what do we do? And, obviously in my head, I'm saying, well, why didn't you send us this contract before you signed it, versus now when you are, you signed a terrible contract and we have a lot less, ways to maneuver.
Yeah.
So that's one. And the other one that can lead to litigation and can cause a lot of issues is co-pack relationships. So a lot of brewers will co-pack for other people, and at the same time, a lot of new brands or even bigger brands will co-pack and not have their own brewery. And there can be issues with regards to, a lot of times it's cans and putting labels on and things like that, where there can be teeny punctures and all of a sudden they start exploding and stack the pallets. So just understanding the risks as it relates to and who's responsible for what is important, because they may sign a contract and then there'll be issues, and then in the contract it's not very clear who's actually responsible for all these things, because the co-packer will say, well, you sent the cans to us, we didn't even buy them, or you had the label company send the labels to us, we just put them in, and whatever it might be, right? So just running through all of the different possible ways that things can go wrong, and thinking through those scenarios ahead of time is another big one. And of course, just sort of the regular marketing and trade practice things.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that's come up lately is websites. There'll be people who are sending, basically like ADA claims, not having your websites being appropriately done, which is not something that we necessarily get too involved in, other than remind people to do it. That's been coming up. And another one that's been coming up for whatever reason is contests and sweepstakes, where they'll just run these contests and sweepstakes without any rules. And consumers, less so the states, but it's like consumers, for whatever reason, will reach out and say, hey, I don't see any rules here. Or, they'll sort of call the brands out, which, I don't know that I would do as a consumer, but as a brand, they get worried because they're like, these consumers keep calling us out for these things. So just running those things the right way is also important.
Absolutely. I'm laughing because I spent decades in sales and marketing, and with sweepstakes, it's such a double-edged sword because there are sweepstakes people, right? And they know exactly how it's supposed to go down. They know that they're supposed to look for those rules. So the sweepstakes thing was always kind of an interesting one, because were you really going to attract the right people to your brand, or are you attracting this group of people that are really good at participating in sweepstakes?
Yeah, exactly.
But something that you said really interesting in terms of the contracts, and they sign the contracts and they don't bring you in ahead of time to look at it. I think people get really excited when a distributor is going to take on their brands, and so they're not really thinking about it. They don't want to mess anything up. But the other piece is, and then they're saying, okay, well, the distributor's doing a terrible job. However, if they're not actually doing all the things that I'm going to be talking about in my talk, it might not be the contract per se. It could be, right? They could have negotiated a better contract, but it's also, what are they bringing to the table, and how are they adding value to the distributor as well, and having those, annual meetings about the outcomes that they're seeking, and negotiating and finding that middle ground and saying, this is what we're going to be contributing throughout the year. And that's not only budget. It could be feet on the street. It could be manpower. It could be marketing. It could be sweepstakes. It could be anything, but really being clear and planning out your year, or at least, half the year, and then have that secondary meeting, giving the distributors advance notice ahead of time, so that they also have to plan as well. A lot of times I see people, again, I've got this great idea. Let me, see if the distributor can execute it. And they've already done their calendars minimum 90 days out. Some are 180 days out. So if you're not getting on their calendars in terms of your programming for the year, again, you're going to lose out. So you could have the best ideas, but you have to get ahead of things, and you have to be proactive, and you have to be part of the whole process. So I thought that was interesting what you said about the contracts.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, distributors are, for smaller brands especially, can be simply trucks. And so people sometimes think they got into a distributor and they're going to start, moving cases, and then they, are having all these high hopes that don't happen because the brand didn't do anything on their end. But of course, the brand has to do the bulk of the work with the distributor. Certainly doing hopefully something, but maybe it's just delivery, and so you just need to have realistic expectations of what they're going to actually do.
Absolutely. So a brewer listening right now, and they are going to walk away with one legal piece of advice to protect their business, what do you think that would be?
Don't pay slotting fees, or give anything that might be permissible in exchange for slotting fees. So basically, giving something for back bar, less so beer, but being on the menu, having a tap, salespersonship, good sales and good account support and things like that in permissible ways is totally great. But when you start saying, I'll give you money, or I'll give you free goods, or I'll give you, a trip or tickets, or, whatever it is in exchange for those things, the this for that is a big issue. And that ultimately, if done egregiously, or if a regulator finds out, or if there's a consumer complaint, or a trade complaint, or another wholesaler complaint, or whatever it might be, because you took over their tap, and that's typically how investigations start, is a complaint from, not necessarily a competitor, but it could be. Those are the areas where you're going to get into the, most trouble with potential fines or even really egregious license suspensions. So I spend a lot of time on that because people will go into accounts and, especially the bigger brands, but even the smaller ones, as they may not have as much training or knowledge about the industry and what is correct and not correct, and they may have salespeople coming in from other industries where it's different, or even these days a lot they'll come from like the non-alc world where it's completely different. And they'll just the emails they'll send or the things that they'll say to accounts, you're just like, this should not be not only happening but certainly not in writing.
Absolutely. That the space is so layered. Every state has different legalities, and what you're saying in terms of like pay to play, like especially like you go to a supermarket, you go to the cereal section, right? That's the norm, right? I want to pay to be at eye level, or I'm going to pay for displays on the floor, and then absolutely cannot do that in the alcohol beverage industry. And there are going to be like all kinds of different nuances in terms of even POS that you can make and create. I think it's probably the same. I remember when I was out in California, the only thing that you could give away could only cost like 25 cents, like to get bar giveaways, right? But then other states, it could be $1. And then some other states, there's no limit. So really, and in terms of partnering with your distributors, they're also the experts in the states that they work in too. So, there's help. There's people like Ryan, there's people like me, there's people like your distributors. The help is there. So, I would say if there was one thing that I was going to tell people today is to make sure that you are really educating yourself as much as you can. However, there's a whole world of people out there that can also help you, right? You don't have to be the expert in every single area of your business, but you should be an expert in who you can bring in to help you get there.
Yeah, and we like act as outside general counsel for a number of brands who are even some that are relatively large, where they'll send us all of the any legal need, and then we'll know whether or not it is something we would handle, or we bring in or refer to other employment matters, for instance, right? Like we would refer and bring in people in different states as it comes up. But yeah, it's important to have somebody on your team who you can call with any random question, and feel like you're going to be able to get to the bottom of whatever the issue is, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, this has been great. How can people find you?
Yeah, so our website is malkin.law, malkin.law, and you can also follow us on LinkedIn at the same at Malkin Law, and we have a newsletter which we send out quarterly, and you can follow us on Instagram, or you can also just call me anytime, 305-763-8539. But yeah, drop to the website malkin.law, and also find me at CBC. I'll be there on Tuesday.
Fantastic. So yeah, Ryan's session again is Legal Jeopardy, Test Your Knowledge. It's Tuesday the 21st at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be at the Think Tank stage in Exhibit Hall A. And then my session is Attention to Action, Winning Distributor Mindshare to Deliver Revenue Results. It's on April 22nd at 9 a.m. and I'm in 201AB. And if you want to get in touch with me, right here, connect with me on LinkedIn. Again, like Ryan, I'm happy to answer any questions. Don't be afraid to reach out, ask a question. I speak quite frequently with Women of the Wine and Spirits. We're a member of WSWA, and we're also a member of the Brewers Association. And we just joined the Garden State Wine Growers Association. So we're heavily involved in the industry, and we really love to help people too. Don't feel like you have to do it alone. Thank you so much, Ryan. I am so excited for the conference, and I'll see you there.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.